They may be called one-hit wonders, but each of these departed musicians gave us a song that became permanently enshrined in the cultural zeitgeist before they died. By the late 90s, the death of grunge left an open space in the culture for a slightly edgy, youth-oriented musical form. The music industry decided that the new hot thing ought to be electronica, an umbrella term for several styles of digital dance music emerging from clubs in the US and Western Europe. The most visually interesting acts got the most airtime on MTV, and so The Prodigy got a lot of airplay thanks to its frontman, Keith Flint. Flint rocked a dyed, distinct hairstyle, thick eye makeup, and street fashion as he bounded around stages and screens, singing with a menacing edge, rapping, chanting, and even chatting the vocal hooks on The Prodigy's forward-leaning music. The collective's 1997 album, The Fat of the Land, debuted at number 1 on Billboard's album chart, but only Firestarter did much business with retail and radio in the US, peaking at number 30. While they faded from the spotlight in the US, The Prodigy remained moderately successful in the UK, where they originated in the early 90s. In 2019, Flint died by suicide. He was 49 years old. Rap rock dominated rock radio and record sales in the late 90s and early 2000s. Bands like Limp Bizkit and Linkin Park sold a ton of records, but only one rap rock single ever made it to number 1 on the Hot 100 chart, and that was Butterfly by Crazy Town. Utilizing a sample of a song by rap rock pioneers the Red Hot Chili Peppers, the hooky up-tempo love song was also the only tune the Los Angeles collective ever landed on the Hot 100. Both the song and the popular music video showcased tough-looking Crazy Town frontman Seth Brooks Binzer, known as Shifty Shellshock, as he rapped and reminisced about not-so-tough subjects like romance and being saved by true love's kiss. In June 2024, Binzer died at his home in the Los Angeles area. An autopsy ruled that the erstwhile Shifty Shellshock died of an accidental overdose of a combination of substances, including cocaine, methamphetamine, and fentanyl. The Crazy Town rapper was 49 years old. B-Rock and the Biz was the first hip-hop act from Mobile, Alabama to enjoy national coverage and pop stardom. Along with rappers Baron B-Rock Agee and Thaddeus T-Bird May, Paul Kostick contributed the musical elements of the collective sound and did double duty as their manager. After being discovered at a talent show, B-Rock and the Biz released their first album in 1997 and promoted it with the single My Baby Daddy. Built around a joyful, frenetic sample of the Emotions' 1977 hit Best of My Love, My Baby Daddy was a lighthearted look at a jealous man skeptical about his partner hanging around with another man, whom she swears is merely the father of her young child. My Baby Daddy made it to number 10 on the pop chart and number 3 on the R&B chart. Kostick never scored another big hit, but he got some press when he played out some real-life relationship drama on an episode of Divorce Court. Kostick and his former wife argued about who was the rightful owner of a gold record issued by the Recording Industry Association of America for My Baby Daddy, which honestly sounds like a no-brainer, since it was his song. In 2023, Kostick died at home in Norfolk, Virginia, after an undisclosed illness. He was 57.
The weirdest thing I ever saw.
You called, Mr. Wolfgang?
While most major musical acts of the late 60s were chasing an edgy, psychedelic sound, Herbert Corey, performing as Tiny Tim, recorded super old songs from the vaudeville era and the early 20th century, and he performed them in a singular and unforgettable way, in a warbling, sometimes failing falsetto, while accompanying himself on a ukulele.
That's the damnedest act I've ever seen.
With a look to match, thick, pale makeup, ill-fitting suits, and wild hair, Tiny Tim became a hit at the New York hipster venue The Scene, which got him seen by TV variety show bookers and Peter Yarrow of Peter, Paul and Mary, who helped Corey get a contract at Reprise Records. God Bless Tiny Tim sold a decent 200,000 copies in 1968 on the strength of Tiptoe Through the Tulips, a cover of a song from 1929. Tiny Tim's version made it to number 17 on the Hot 100. The public was completely fascinated with Tiny Tim, and when he married a fan named Miss Vicky on The Tonight Show, the program earned some of its best ratings ever. But by 1970, the Tiny Tim craze had died down. In September 1996, Corey played a ukulele festival in Massachusetts, and during his performance, he had a heart attack and fell from the stage. After being hospitalized for 11 days, the musician returned to the performance circuit. At a benefit show in Minneapolis, while singing Tiptoe Through the Tulips, Corey felt too sick to continue and collapsed. he was declared dead at a local hospital. Tiny Tim was 64. As the human voice of a synthesizer-heavy dance-pop project, Jimmy McShane was a one-hit wonder 2 times over. In the mid-'80s, Northern Ireland-born McShane decamped to Milan, Italy, and became an icon in the city's thriving dance club culture. There, local musician Maurizio Bassi recruited him to be the singer and public face of a studio collective he called Baltimora. In 1985, scarcely a year after beginning to play together, Baltimora had a worldwide hit on its hands with Tarzan Boy. Landing high on the dance and pop charts in the US, Tarzan Boy remained Baltimora's only American success for nearly a decade. Then, the producers of the movie Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3 included Tarzan Boy on their soundtrack. Once again, it climbed the charts, reaching a respectable number 51 in the spring of 1993. Not bad for a group that had split up in 1987. In 1994, McShane was diagnosed with AIDS, and he returned to his hometown of Derry to spend what would be his last days. After suffering numerous AIDS-related complications, including dementia and 9 separate bouts of pneumonia, McShane died in March 1995 at the age of 37. One of the biggest hits of 1969 was In the Year 2525, Exordium and Terminus, by Nebraska duo Denny Zager and Rick Evans. They took on the collective cultural anxiety of the late 60s and poured it into an acoustic, guitar-driven but hard-charging folk rock tune that speculates on the bewildering and terrifying, if extremely distant, future of humanity. This apocalyptic, pleading, sci-fi journey with the baffling title somehow went to number 1 in both the US and the UK. Sadly, Zager and Evans' futures never brought them anywhere close to the top of the charts in any country ever again. Evans was the songwriting component in Zager and Evans, and was the driving vision behind In the Year 2525. In February 2018, Evans died of natural causes at his home outside Santa Fe, New Mexico. He was 75. After disbanding their Ohio rock band and moving to Atlanta to become commercial jingle writers, Jerry Buckner and Gary Garcia began recording novelty songs for local radio.
Jerry, Gary, Buckner, Garcia, did I sort it out right?
That's correct.
It was 1981, and one of the most exciting things happening in American pop culture was the emergence of video games as a viable, profitable, and addictive form of entertainment. Under the name of Buckner and Garcia, the duo recorded a country pop single about a light addiction to the most popular game around, Pac-Man Fever. The song started out as an independently released local hit on Atlanta radio, but CBS Records took the song national, and in early 1982, as Pac-Man Fever spread across the country, Pac-Man Fever squeaked into the top 10 of the Billboard Hot 100. Another single from a hastily recorded album of songs all about video games, Do the Donkey Kong, died on the vine, and Buckner and Garcia's hit-making days came to an end. On November 17, 2011, Garcia died of undisclosed causes at his home in Inglewood, Florida. He was 63 years old. The art of scatting, singing nonsensical, improvised vocals derived from the more freeform styles of jazz, first became a thing in the 1920s. About 7 decades later, scatting enjoyed a brief revival in the form of one unlikely hit single. John Larkin, who called himself Scatman John, displayed his uniquely precise and undeniable scatting talents on the 1995 dance club tune Scatman, Skip-a-bop-da-bop-pop. The song was made up of little more than a thumping beat, propulsive synthesizers, and Larkin scatting and occasionally pausing to remind listeners, "I'm the Scatman." Scatman raced up the American dance and pop charts. It was the only hit single for Larkin, who had been a respected songwriter and jazz pianist who took up scatting in 1984 to help himself overcome his persistent stuttering.
I'm a jazz player, but now I've all of a sudden turned into a rap singer, and I'm having a ball.
Less than 5 years after his surprising commercial breakthrough, it was all over for the Scatman. In December 1999, Larkin died of cancer, which had been found in his lungs and brain. Scatman John was 57 years old. Sister Luke Gabrielle, whose pre-convent name was Janine Deckers, was cloistered at the Fisherman Monastery in Belgium, when in 1962 she booked studio time at Philips Records in Brussels. She wanted to record her original folk songs about Catholic saints and press a limited number of discs to give to friends. But Philips loved her lilting songs so much that it released Deckers' recordings commercially, credited to Sœur Sourire, which means Sister Smile in English. The LP was popular throughout Europe, and in the US, the single, Dominique, was a monster hit. The song was a tribute to 12th century figure Saint Dominique. It was played on an acoustic guitar with Soeur Sourire singing lead in French and 4 nuns on backing vocals. Dominique spent 4 weeks at number 1 on the pop chart in late 1963. After a crisis of faith in the mid-60s, Deckers left the convent. In 1978, she learned that she owed the Belgian government the equivalent of $126,000 in taxes from record sales. At the time, she was barely eking out a living teaching guitar lessons, and all her earnings from the album had gone to her convent. There was no way she could pay such a huge tax bill. In 1985, authorities in Wavre, Belgium, discovered Decker's body in her home, next to that of another woman, later identified as her partner, Annie Pescher. The woman left a note explaining that they'd elected to die by suicide to escape the crushing financial pressure. Deckers was 51 years old. To anyone who first heard the Lord's Prayer back in 1974, it must have sounded like lots of other hard rock from around that time. But out of a lot of fuzzed-out, psychedelic-style guitar noodling emerged the sweet and hypnotic voice of Sister Janet Mead, singing the words of the Lord's Prayer.
I think that everyone has a song to sing, really, haven't they?
Mead was a real Catholic nun from Australia, and her mission to reach the youth of the world with a spiritual message on their level was a certified hit. In her home base of Adelaide, she'd been staging a rock music-based mass at a local cathedral. Inspired by the response, she recorded the Lord's Prayer, which eventually sold about 2 million copies, hit the charts in more than 30 countries, and rose to number 4 on the pop chart in the United States. Mead refused to do any press, and donated all the money she earned to charity, while remaining a nun and parochial schoolteacher. In January 2022, Mead died after being diagnosed with cancer. The nun who spent a brief shining moment in the rock and roll spotlight was 84 years old. Robert Miles was an Italian musician who mainly worked in electronic-based genres. His dad was a humanitarian aid worker, and he showed Miles photos of kids victimized by the 1990s civil war in Yugoslavia. The photos inspired Miles to write Children in 1995. Along with the tragedy in Eastern Europe, the trance-adjacent, emotionally evocative song had an additional inspiration. A series of middle-of-the-night car accidents in Italy involving clubgoers led to the call for electronic musicians to make chill songs with a relaxed vibe to be played at the close of DJ sets. The idea was to help revelers calm down before they climbed behind the wheel. Children was a smash all over Europe, inside and outside the clubs. It made its way to the US, hitting number 21 in the summer of 1996, the first time an instrumental had made an impact on the Billboard Hot 100 in years. Miles went on to more success in the world of dance music, and his singles were hits across Europe. He even won the International Award at the 1997 Brit Awards, but his later music never equaled the success of Children in the US. In 2017, shortly after being diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, Miles died at the age of 47. In 1983, Carl Wallinger joined the Scottish pop band The Waterboys as a keyboardist just as the group was getting some attention. Wallinger helped create the group's sweeping, epic sound. Released in 1985, the Waterboys single, The Hole of the Moon, was a bust at first, but when it was re-released in 1991, it climbed all the way to number 3 on the UK chart. It would be the only top 10 hit for the band, but by then, Wallinger had left to start a more freewheeling project, World Party, named after a 1989 single he wrote for the Waterboys, which happened to be the only hit of any kind the band had in the US market. World Party was essentially a one-man band, with Wallinger playing most of the instruments and handling vocals, and occasionally bringing in guests to help him make music that merged a Beatles-esque pop sound with alternative rock themes. In 1986, Ship of Fools, Save Me From Tomorrow became a top 5 hit on rock radio, and it sailed into the top 30 of the pop chart. World Party never had a second smash hit. In 2001, Wallinger's career was sidelined for several years due to a physically debilitating brain aneurysm, and in March 2024, he died at home in Hastings, England, at the age of 66. B.W. Stevenson was more of a country crooner than a pop singer, but in 1973, his dreamy, twangy single, My Maria, missed the country singles chart, rocketed to the top of the adult contemporary list, and made the pop top 10. While Stevenson only landed that one hit, he became an influential figure in the music industry. My Maria was a precursor to the country pop movement of the 70s, and Three Dog Night took a cover of Stevenson's Shambhala to number 3 in 1973. When Brooks and Dunn recorded a version of My Maria in 1996, it went to the top of the country chart. Following My Maria, Stevenson recorded 4 more studio albums, but none generated any substantial hit singles. In 1988, Stevenson became seriously ill, and after being diagnosed with heart disease, he underwent corrective surgery at a Nashville hospital. The operation was unsuccessful, and the 38-year-old Stevenson died in April of that year, 5 months after the birth of his son. Just after the era of 60s British blues rock, and just before the rise of hard-edged arena rock, was the sweet spot for All Right Now by the band Free. Now a classic rock radio perennial, the song was released on the band's third album, Fire and Water. Free was formed in 1968 by singer Paul Rodgers and guitarist Chris Kossoff, who recruited 16-year-old bassist and songwriter Andy Frazier from John Mayall's Blues Breakers, which he'd joined at the age of 15. All Right Now hit number 4 in 1970, but none of Free's subsequent 4 LPs generated a commercially viable single. The group split in 1973. Rodgers and drummer Simon Kirke formed Bad Company, and Frazier went on to release one unsuccessful solo album, Fine, Fine Line, in 1984. In 2015, Frazier's family announced in a statement that he had died from complications of AIDS, which he'd been diagnosed with in the 80s. Frazier was 62 years old. Before MTV's TRL disappeared, the by request video countdown show's seemingly unlimited parade of boy band material drove a lot of traffic to the cable channel in the early 2000s. MTV attempted to play both sides of the issue, both building up and simultaneously mocking boy bands. In 2000, it aired the original movie Together, about the creation and rise of a fictional boy band.
I want to videotape you doing your thing. I can make you a star.
A franchise was born. A Together TV series, book, and series of albums were spit out fast, and the actors who played Together in the film hit the road as fellow TRL prodigy Britney Spears' opening act. Together included and satirized the personality types included in every single boy band ever. Its fresh-faced, youthful member was Jason Q.T. McKnight, played by singer-actor Michael Cuccione. He sang on Together's only chart hit, "The hardest part of breaking up is getting back your stuff," which, if you think about it, is kind of a fact. Cuccione was diagnosed with Hodgkin's disease during childhood, but was pronounced cancer-free at age 10. In 2000, Cuccione, 15 years old at the time, injured his diaphragm in a car accident and checked into British Columbia Children's Hospital for surgery. He developed pneumonia, and his lungs, severely damaged after childhood chemotherapy, were too weak to fight off the infection. In January 2001, Cuccione's lungs collapsed and he died. He turned 16 just 8 days earlier. In July 2021, the world lost one of the biggest one-hit wonders of all time, Biz Markie. His song, Just a Friend, peaked at number 9 on Billboard in 1990 and stayed on the charts for 22 weeks. The song is a rap by Markie mixed with some of the beat and lyrics of the 1968 song You Got What I Need by Freddie Scott. It went platinum in the year of its release. Biz Markie was born Marcel Theo Hall in Harlem, New York in 1964. According to Vulture, Markie burst onto the rap scene in 1985 as a reputed beatboxer. He came up alongside famous rappers such as Doug E. Fresh and often worked with Big Daddy Kane. His hip-hop talents, mixed with his humorous lyrics, earned him the title the Clown Prince of Hip-Hop. Markie released a few more albums after the success of Just a Friend, and continued to perform for decades, but he never entered the charts again. The rapper's health took a downturn starting in April 2020. He died July 16, 2021 in Baltimore, Maryland, at just 57 years old. Markie's cause of death is unconfirmed, but he was known to have struggled with type 2 diabetes. In 2010, Cali Swag District's first single, Teach Me How to Dougie, became a national dance sensation. Michelle Obama could be found doing the Dougie at her Let's Move events and on Late Night with Jimmy Fallon. According to The Guardian, the Dougie was inspired by the dance moves of 1980s hip-hop artist Doug E. Fresh. In May 2011, one of the members of Cali Swag District, Monte M-Bone Talbert, was killed in Inglewood, California in a drive-by shooting. According to Billboard, M-Bone was the comedic center of the group and helped launch the Dougie to mainstream audiences. Talbert was only 22 years old. After his death, the remaining 3 members continued and released an album, The Kickback. In 2014, the group lost a second member, Karan J.R. Childs. He was suffering from sickle cell anemia and died of a cardiac arrest after being admitted to a hospital. He was 25 years old. Following these 2 tragedies, Cali Swag District dissolved. Adam Schlesinger formed Fountains of Wayne with Chris Collingwood in the mid-90s. The band didn't have a hit until 2003 when they released the song Stacy's Mom. According to youdiscovermusic.com, Schlesinger and Collingwood wrote the song based on a friend of Schlesinger's who was attracted to his grandma. It was an ode to early puberty, Schlesinger said. It's a combination of sexual awakening and limited contact with a large number of people. The song earned them a Grammy nomination for Best Vocal Performance and Best New Artist. Adam Schlesinger was a talented writer and musician who wrote a lot of music for television in addition to his Fountains of Wayne success. Schlesinger won a Grammy for A Colbert Christmas, the greatest gift of all. He also won 3 Emmys, one for his work on Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, and 2 for co-writing the Tony Awards telecast. Furthermore, Schlesinger was nominated for an Oscar for the title track in the 1996 film That Thing You Do. On April 1st, 2020, it was announced that Schlesinger had died from complications caused by COVID-19. He was 52 years old. Johann Hans Hölzel went by the stage name Falco, and his song Rock Me Amadeus hit number 1 on the Billboard charts in 1986. While only known for Rock Me Amadeus in the US, Hölzel's 1982 debut hit, Der Kommissar, hit European charts when he was only 25 years old. According to Der Spiegel, Hölzel was philosophical about his fame. He said, "Today, platinum. Tomorrow, tin. Today they kiss your feet, and tomorrow the dog won't even look at you." Technically, Rock Me Amadeus is a rap song, meaning that the Austrian singer holds the distinct recognition of being the first rap artist to reach number 1 on the US charts. While Falco never had another hit at the same level, he did sell 60 million records over the course of his career. While vacationing in the Dominican Republic in 1998, a car Hölzel was driving was hit by a truck. He died at age 40. Doug Fieger was the lead singer of the band The Knack, whose hit My Sharona was number 1 in the summer of 1979. The song gained attention again in 1994 when it was part of the film Reality Bites soundtrack. According to NPR, Fieger was inspired to write the song by a teenager named Sharona Alperin. While the two did date, they never married, but remained friends. In an interview for Variety, Alperin said the song took Fieger less than 15 minutes to write. Fieger was born in Detroit in 1952 and grew up in Oak Park, Michigan. Before graduating high school, his band Sky signed to RCA. Sky recorded 2 albums, but then the band dissolved. In 1978, Fieger created The Knack. After the success of their debut album and the hit My Sharona, The Knack went on to release a few more albums, but never again reached the success of their first run. In 2010, Fieger died of lung cancer. He was 57. Pete Burns was the lead singer of the band Dead or Alive, whose song You Spin Me Right Round reached the Billboard Top 20 in 1985. According to Newsweek, the track was also covered by Adam Sandler in the movie The Wedding Singer, Jessica Simpson in 2005, and had even greater success in 2009 when it was sampled on Flo Rida and Kesha's Right Round. The song was produced by SAW, a trio that went on to create other hits such as Rick Astley's Never Gonna Give You Up. Burns was born in Cheshire, England in 1959. His father was English, and his mother, who was German, had survived the Holocaust. He dropped out of school at age 14 and formed the band Dead or Alive by 1980. According to The Guardian, Burns became famous for his androgynous style and his progressive approach to gender. He even accused Boy George of stealing his style.
Anybody that sets themselves apart visually is not like anybody else. It's the most obvious statement that you can make, your visual side.
Dead or Alive recorded several albums, but never again achieved the same level of success as with You Spin Me Right Round. Burns remained in the limelight through appearances on reality shows, including Big Brother and Celebrity Wife Swap, and was a well-known figure in the UK. According to the BBC, Burns died of a cardiac arrest in 2016. He was 57 years old. Minnie Riperton is most famous for her song Lovin' You, which was released in 1974. The song is a high-pitched lullaby that was originally created for Riperton's daughter, Maya Rudolph. Yes, the well-known comedian from Saturday Night Live and Bridesmaids.
I didn't really put together that Lovin' You is for me and my brother.
Lovin' You has been featured in commercials for large companies such as Burger King and Visa. It has also been used in films such as Vegas Vacation and The Nutty Professor. Riperton was born in Chicago in 1947 and studied music, drama, and dance as a young girl. Before graduating high school, she joined a band called The Gems, which signed with Chicago's Chess Records. She also performed backup vocals for the Dells and Etta James. In the late 60s, she partnered with her husband, Richard Rudolph, a prolific composer. Because she had worked as a backup singer for Stevie Wonder, the legendary musician agreed to help her produce her album Perfect Angel, which featured the song Lovin' You. Riperton's fame grew slowly, but soon she was doing appearances on American Bandstand and Soul Train. Just as she was offered the opportunity to release another album, she was diagnosed with breast cancer. She continued to perform for live audiences until her death in 1979. She was just 31. Polly Fuemana was the lead singer of OMC, whose song How Bizarre was #1 on the US Billboard charts in 1997 and stayed on the charts for 32 weeks. OMC stood for Otara Millionaires Club, in homage to the neighborhood where Fuemana grew up in Auckland, New Zealand. According to The Guardian, Otara was one of New Zealand's poorest communities, hence the irony of the name. Fuemana was born to a Maori mother and a Niuean father and spoke Niuean first. He reportedly had a rough childhood, joining gangs and later spending time in youth prison. Then, success came at him fast, and he did not handle it well. He was sued by his producer for royalties, and by 2006 had declared bankruptcy. Fuemana continued to work at building his music career, but never reached the success of How Bizarre again.
It was a good ride while it lasted, and I got to see the world. I really got to see the world.
In 2010, Fuemana died of a rare autoimmune disorder. He was 40 years old and left behind his wife and 6 children. According to youdiscovermusic.com, the hit continues to be popular. It reports that more than 100,000 TikTok videos incorporate the song's lyrics and that the How Bizarre hashtag has generated more than 1.4 billion views. Chrissy Amphlett was the lead singer of the Australian rock band The Divinyls, best known for their 1991 hit song I Touch Myself. The song was a collaboration between the band and songwriters Tom Kelly and Billy Steinberg, who were famous for hits, including Madonna's Like a Virgin. The music video for the song was directed by none other than Michael Bay. While the band released 7 albums between 1983 and 1996, none of their songs reached the same level of success as I Touch Myself. Amphlett was born in 1959 in Geelong, Victoria, Australia. She formed the Divinyls in 1980. Along with singing and songwriting, Amphlett was an actress, appearing in an Australian film called Monkey Grip and a stage production of Blood Brothers. In the late 90s, Amphlett left the band to pursue acting further. She was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis in 2006 and breast cancer in 2010. Fittingly, the song I Touch Myself has been used in a campaign to educate women about breast cancer. In 2013, Amphlett died of breast cancer. She was 53 years old. R&B singer Jermaine Stewart's hit song We Don't Have to Take Our Clothes Off reached #5 on the Billboard 100 charts in 1986. The song has popped up on the soundtracks for the film Zack and Miri Make a Porno and TV shows such as Scrubs. According to AllMusic, Stewart started off as a dancer on Soul Train and moved on to be a backup singer for large acts such as Boy George. He landed a deal with Arista Records and released 4 albums, with We Don't Have to Take Our Clothes Off his biggest success. Stewart was born in Columbus, Ohio, but his family moved to Chicago when he was still young. He died in 1997 of liver cancer caused by AIDS, according to a book written by AIDS advocate Dr. Terry Easley. Jermaine Stewart was only 39 years old. Not to be confused with the Bon Jovi song released in 2000, It's My Life was written and sung by Mark Hollis in 1983. No Doubt also covered it in 2003. It's My Life initially entered the charts in 1984, and it was the first and last hit for the band Talk Talk. The band was formed in 1981 in London by Hollis. Shortly after, it signed with EMI and began touring with Duran Duran. After the success of It's My Life, the band decided to change its sound, which made them less commercial, but nevertheless they continued to work together until they released their final album in 1991. Hollis was born in Tottenham, England in 1955. He was heavily influenced by his older brother Ed, who was a music producer. After Talk Talk released its last album, Hollis dropped out of public life to focus on his family. He later released a solo album and was commissioned to do the music for the TV show Boss in 2012. But other than that, he flew under the radar until his death in 2019. Per NPR, Hollis's manager stated that the musician died due to a short illness from which he never recovered. The style and genius of Mark Hollis has been credited as the inspiration for many bands, including Radiohead. I Just Died in Your Arms was a #1 Billboard hit in 1987 for the band Cutting Crew. Kevin McMichael was not the singer, but the lead guitarist and writer for the group. I Just Died in Your Arms earned the band a Grammy nomination for Best New Artist, and Cutting Crew released a few more albums after their debut success, but failed to enter the charts again. They ultimately disbanded in 1993. McMichael was born in New Brunswick, Canada in 1951. He started playing guitar in high school and learned hundreds of Beatles songs. He formed Cutting Crew with Nick Van Eede, the band's lead singer, in 1985. When McMichael left the group, he went on to work with Robert Plant as a guitarist and writer. In 2002, McMichael was diagnosed with lung cancer. He died later that year at the age of 51. It's hard to call Dan Hartman a one-hit wonder because he wrote many great songs, but he is only known for singing one. Aside from writing and performing I Can Dream About You, which peaked at #6 in 1984, he wrote and produced James Brown's Living in America, which made it to #4. Hartman also wrote Living in America for Rocky IV, which earned Hartman a Grammy nomination. According to Songfacts, I Can Dream About You was initially written for the film Streets of Fire. It was sung by a fictional group, the Sorrels, and the vocals were provided by Winston Ford. It is Hartman's voice on the soundtrack and the single released that same year. Hartman was born in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania in 1950. According to DanHartman.com, he began playing piano at age 7 and by 13 was writing songs for his brother's band, The Legends. Dan worked with the Edgar Winter Group in the 70s until he broke out with his first solo album in 1976. While his music did well in the UK, it was not until I Can Dream About You that he reached the US charts. Though he continued to write and produce, nothing else he released had the same success. According to Metrosource, those close to him believe he contracted HIV sometime in the late 1980s. He kept his status a secret, although he died in 1994 from a brain tumor considered related to his AIDS diagnosis. Shannon Hoon was the long-haired 20-something lead singer for the band Blind Melon. The group's hit song No Rain invaded the public's consciousness in 1993. Released in MTV's Glory Days, lots of people remember it from watching the video. It featured a young girl tap dancing in a bee costume on stage and then wandering around Los Angeles looking for applause until she finds a field full of bee people just like her. Hoon was born in Lafayette, Indiana, the same hometown as Axl Rose, in 1967. The Blind Melon frontman sang backing vocals on several Guns N' Roses tracks and also shared lead vocals with Rose on the song Don't Cry.
He invited me to come down to the studio to see what it was like to watch an album be recorded.
At the same time, Hoon was working with Blind Melon, which formed in 1990. In 1995, Hoon was found dead from a cocaine overdose on his tour bus in New Orleans. His daughter, Nico Blue, had been born only 3 months prior. Blind Melon had just released its second album, Soup, and Hoon had just turned 28 a month before. Rob Pilatus was one half of the infamous duo Milli Vanilli, along with Fab Morvan. The act rose to fame with the hit song Girl You Know It's True in 1989. That same year, while performing a concert in Connecticut, the song that they were mouthing along to skipped. Pilatus told Biography, "I knew right then and there it was the beginning of the end for Milli Vanilli." It took the rest of the world a bit longer, but a year later it became widely known that Milli Vanilli was lip-syncing and not the true artists behind the hit. Girl You Know It's True was not even a new song. It was first released by the band Newmarks. Music producer Frank Farian reportedly heard the track and knew he could make it better. He remixed the song with new vocals and hired Pilatus and Morvan to be the frontmen. When the news that the performers were not the same artists who recorded their album broke, Pilatus and Morvan were stripped of their Grammys and ostracized. Though the two tried to make a comeback on an album of their own, they were never able to reach the level of success made with Milli Vanilli.
Money is not that important. For me, really it's important just to find my happiness, my inner peace. And I can't do this with money.
Pilatus died in 1998 of a suspected drug overdose. He was just 33 years old. Stuart Adamson was the lead singer of the band Big Country, best known for their hit song, In a Big Country. The song made it to the U.S. Billboard charts in 1983. According to Songfacts, Adamson said of the song, the lyrical idea was about having hope, a sense of self in times of trouble. Big Country was nominated for 2 Grammys, for Best New Artist and for Best Rock Performance by a duo or group for their song In a Big Country. Born in 1958 in Manchester, England, but raised in Dunfermline, Scotland, Adamson began singing in the punk band The Skids in his teens. He formed Big Country in the 1980s, and according to The Guardian, the band once competed with U2 as contenders for the Celtic rock crown. Big Country continued to make records and perform until 2000, when Adamson decided to leave the group. They never had another hit in the U.S. Adamson moved to Nashville to start an alternative country band called the Raphaels. In 2001, it was reported that Adamson had taken his own life in Honolulu, Hawaii. He was 43 years old. Melanie Thornton was one half of the Europop group La Bouche, along with singer Lane McRae. La Bouche was created by German producer Frank Farian, who worked with Boney M. and Milli Vanilli. In 1995, the group hit the Billboard charts with their song, Be My Lover. Thornton grew up in Charleston, South Carolina, where she started singing in her childhood, usually along to her mother's Motown classics. She moved to Germany in 1992, and a few years later formed La Bouche with McRae. While Be My Lover is the song the band is best known for, La Bouche had other popular songs within the dance music scene. Thornton decided to leave the group in 2000 to produce a solo album. While out promoting that album, she died in a plane crash at just 34 years old. After her death, her song Wonderful Dream was used in a Coca-Cola commercial, as had been planned before her fateful crash. Natina Reed was a singer in the trio Black, who became well known in 1999 for their hit Bring It All to Me. The girl group was discovered and mentored by Lisa Left Eye Lopez of TLC. Reed and the other two members, Brandy Williams and Shamari DeVoe, also had minor roles in the film Bring It On in 2000.
You've been touched by an angel, girl.
From the time Reed was 8 years old, she was in entertainment and began as a model for Macy's and Bloomingdale's. Black formed in 1996, when the girls were still in high school. After their debut's major success, the trio released a few more studio albums but never had another hit. In 2012, just as Reed was planning a comeback, she was hit by a car while crossing a street in Atlanta. She was 31 years old and a mother to a 10-year-old son. While he only scored one hit tune of his own, Indiana Wants Me, a number 5 single in 1970, Toronto native R. Dean Taylor was responsible for a slew of others. When faced with the daunting task of coming up with a new song for the Supremes, and given only about a week to do so, he and fellow songwriter Pam Sawyer penned the smash hit Love Child, the first of 2 top 10 hits he would have a hand in writing for the iconic girl group. Indiana Wants Me, about an outlaw on the run, was typical of Taylor's work as a songwriter, dark and cinematic, with a strong narrative informed by its framing as a letter to a lover the poor guy knows he'll never see again. Speaking with the Toronto Star, Taylor's wife Janie said, "He wrote dark songs. He wrote about things that were troubling people in life." She went on to explain that after a move to Los Angeles, Taylor dabbled with the formation of his own labels and production companies, none of which ever bore any fruit, which caused him to become a touch disillusioned. Taylor died in January 2022, roughly a year after a bout with COVID-19, from which he had never fully recovered. British blues rockers 10 years after had a pretty decent run of success in the late 60s and early 70s, notching 5 top 40 albums and a lone hit single, I'd Love to Change the World, which just cracked the top 40 in 1971. It may be that none of this success would have come their way if not for a few minutes that shook the guitar world, a sizzling, dizzying solo by singer and guitarist Alvin Lee, who peeled off said solo in the middle of an 11-minute rendition of I'm Going Home at Woodstock. The performance was captured for posterity in the legendary documentary film of the same name. Lee's inspired performance was a highlight of a festival that was full of those, and it's safe to say that the appearance raised his band's profile considerably. Lee remained active as a musician up until the end of his life, landing no fewer than 7 solo albums on the Billboard chart and releasing his final effort, Still on the Road to Freedom, just a year before his death. The guitarist died in 2013 at the age of 68, after complications arose during a surgery that was described as routine. In a statement, his wife and daughters described him as a truly great and talented musician, while his bandmate, Leo Lyons, speaking with Billboard, called him an inspiration for a generation of guitar players. Singer, songwriter, and guitarist Phoebe Snow's career might have gone very differently had fate not intervened. With a songwriting talent to match her formidable vocal chops, she debuted in 1974 with her self-titled debut album, which peaked at number 4 on the Billboard chart and yielded a single, Poetry Man, which went to number 5 in 1975. It was during this period, while enjoying the view from the top of the charts, that her daughter Valerie was born. unfortunately with severe brain damage that left her disabled for her entire life. Rather than institutionalize her daughter, Snow vastly scaled back her career ambitions to care for her herself at home. In a 2008 interview with the San Francisco Chronicle, the singer said, "Occasionally I put an album out, but I didn't like to tour, and they didn't get a lot of label support. But you know what? It didn't really matter, because I got to stay home more with Valerie, and that time was precious." Indeed, Snow's noble decision seemed to have made all the difference in the world. Valerie, who wasn't expected to live more than a handful of years, died in 2007 at the age of 31. Snow helped to pay the bills by singing commercial jingles and TV themes, including the theme for the Cosby Show spinoff A Different World. Peers were well aware of her greatness. She sang backup for Paul Simon and performed with the likes of Thelma Houston, Michael McDonald, and Boz Scaggs throughout the years. After suffering from a brain hemorrhage in 2010, she died in April 2011. While Stax and Motown were blasting their way onto the national music scene with their rollicking, punchy brands of R&B in the late 60s, a few visionary groups out of Philadelphia were taking a different approach, favoring smooth harmonies over emphatic vocals and silky strings over blaring horn sections. These groups won over a large segment of the R&B audience with their Philly sound. Such classic tunes include La La Means I Love You and Didn't I Blow Your Mind This Time, both by the Delphonics, who were among the first purveyors of this smoother style. Vocalist Major Harris was a relative latecomer to the group, replacing the departed Randy Kane in 1971. After a 3-year run, Harris himself departed in 1975 to pursue a solo career, which may have been the final nail in the coffin of the Delphonics. But Harris enjoyed near immediate success with Love Won't Let Me Wait, a number 5 hit in 1975. Unfortunately, he failed to come within shouting distance of that success again, but his lone hit proved to have an enviable shelf life, spawning covers by Johnny Mathis with Denise Williams, Luther Vandross, and Seal. In 2011, Harris got together with a few of his old bandmates in the Delphonics. The following year, he died of congestive heart failure at the age of 65. Singer, songwriter, and producer Van McCoy would have had an enviable career had he never even had a single design on becoming a performer. He often worked with fellow songwriters Charles Kipps and sometimes girlfriend Kendra Spotswood. He also wrote or co-wrote such iconic tunes as I Get the Sweetest Feeling, a number 34 hit for Jackie Wilson, Giving Up, which cracked the top 40 for Gladys Knight and the Pips, and Baby I'm Yours, a number 11 smash for Barbara Lewis. McCoy, though, wanted more, and throughout the 70s, he repeatedly tried to make an impact as a solo artist, releasing a series of LPs that failed to gain any traction. Seeking to capitalize on the disco craze, McCoy put together some new tracks for the 1975 LP Disco Baby. The last to be recorded was a lively tune anchored by an earwormy flute riff inspired by a dance that had been described to him by New York DJ and producer David Todd. The name of that dance was the Latin Hustle, and you have now probably gathered that McCoy was moved by his conversation with Todd to cut The Hustle, a smash hit that spent 15 weeks on the Billboard Hot 100 and peaked in the very top spot. After failing to grab lightning in a bottle again with several follow-up LPs, McCoy briefly returned to producing, but tragically, he had a heart attack and died in 1979. Bobby Caldwell has always commanded the respect of R&B aficionados. His undeniably smooth, textured voice is of the variety that should have anchored dozens of hit records. Instead, somehow, it graced only one, What You Won't Do for Love, a number 9 hit in 1978. In a 2005 interview with NPR, it was pointed out by interviewer Ed Gordon that during the 60s and even 70s, many record labels would not picture black artists on their record covers, for fear that white audiences wouldn't buy their music. For Caldwell, however, it was the opposite, as his label was depending on the support of black radio to launch his career, saying, "They really didn't want it to be well known that I was white. Today, as we speak, there are still a few holdovers that don't know that." Caldwell was active in the music business both before and after his brush with top 10 success, starting out as a guitarist for the legendary Little Richard, and penning tunes later in his career for the likes of Peter Cetera, Boz Scaggs, and Neil Diamond. His signature tune has been covered dozens of times, and even sampled by Tupac for Do for Love, a posthumous number 21 hit for the rapper. Caldwell's final album, the brilliantly titled Cool Uncle, was released in 2015. In March 2023, his wife Mary announced via X, formerly known as Twitter, that he had died in his home at the age of 71 after years of health issues. Considering its status as a beloved touchstone of pop music and popular culture in general, it's tough to overstate just what an extreme outlier the Sugar Hill Gang's immortal Rapper's Delight was when it hit the airwaves in late 1979. It was a top 40 pop single that was about 15 minutes long. Released on a tiny regional label, it was performed by three dudes, Wonder Mike Wright, Guy Master G. O'Brien, and Henry Big Bank Hank Jackson, whom nobody had ever heard of, in a style that few listeners outside of New York were familiar with. Wonder Mike even helpfully included in his opening verse an explanation of just what the heck was happening. Now what you hear is not a test, I'm rapping to the beat. Jackson, who of course was 6'1", tons of fun, and dressed to a T, caught some flack in later years for cribbing pretty much all of his rhymes for the song from legendary old school MC Grandmaster Caz. He voluntarily offered them up, but was a bit miffed when the song took off and he received no credit. But Hank's unique voice and delivery were undeniably a vital part of the Sugar Hill Gang's formula. And while they never notched another mainstream hit, more than a few of their tunes are important parts of the old school rap canon, including Eighth Wonder. After undergoing treatment for cancer, Hank died in 2014 at the age of 58. The songwriting team of Gene McFadden and John Whitehead were essential to Philly soul music in the 70s. Together, they penned hits for the likes of the O'Jays and Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes, and later in their careers, they worked alongside such legends as Freddie Jackson, Gloria Gaynor, and Melba Moore. In 1979, they took a crack at success as recording artists, releasing their self-titled debut album, which showcased their formidable vocal abilities in addition to their well-established songwriting chops. The album charted well within the top 40, and its lead single not only became a hit, but an R&B touchstone, the bright, uplifting anthem Ain't No Stoppin' Us Now, a number 13 hit on the pop chart. The pair's commercial fortunes dwindled after the early 80s, and unfortunately, theirs is a story that ends in tragedy. In 2004, Whitehead was working on his car outside his Philadelphia home when witnesses say he was attacked by 3 men who shot him to death. While the killing has never been solved, Whitehead's family told Fox 29 Philadelphia that they heard through the grapevine that the singer was incorrectly targeted and that those responsible are no longer living.
I feel like somebody should be held accountable.
Not even a year and a half later, McFadden joined his partner in death, dying from cancer at the age of 56. In a statement at that time, Kenny Gamble and Leon Huff, founders of their label, Philadelphia International, said, "Their talent was indispensable. As artists and producers, we admired them in the studio. As songwriters, we appreciated them for sharing our commitment to creating lyrics of motivation and strength." There are plenty of one-hit wonders that are still fondly remembered years after the fact, but not many that can induce listeners to recall the entirety of the lyrics upon simply hearing the opening verse. I Want to Rock Right Now. The phrase appears in the number 36 Billboard smash It Takes Two by rap duo Rob Bass and DJ Easy Rock. Before that release, Bass, whose real name is Robert Ginyard, and Easy Rock, whose real name was Rodney Bryce, had been up-and-comers and had dropped their first single, Make It Hot, on a small indie label. They subsequently signed with Profile, home to platinum hitmakers Run DMC. It Takes Two was chosen as the lead single, and, thanks in large part to an incredibly distinctive breakbeat sampled from Think About It by Lynn Collins, the tune blasted the pair to worldwide stardom. It was a short-lived ride. Bryce sat out the next round, with Ginyard releasing 1989's The Incredible Bass as a solo effort, and their reunion for 1994's Break of Dawn was in service of a record that barely registered a blip on the cultural radar. While Ginyard continued to perform, he never recorded another album, and after years of de facto retirement, Bryce died after a diabetic seizure in 2014. Ginyard posted a simple tribute to his musical partner on Instagram, writing, "R.I.P. Skip, DJ Easy Rock, my friend, my brother." Benny Mardones, by his own admission, might have been a bigger star if he had managed to avoid the pitfalls of fame that have claimed the careers and even lives of so many, namely drugs, and lots of them. In a 2011 interview with Songfacts, Mardones recalled, "I fell victim to the excesses of success in rock and roll at a young age. I was freebasing cocaine. When it was time to go on tour, I was nowhere to be found." He explained that he had committed the cardinal sin of rock and roll, adding, "I had a huge hit record, and the follow-up was almost non-existent." But what a huge hit record that was, indeed. The tune that catapulted Mardones to stardom was Into the Night, a number 11 hit in 1980 that was so good that, when he re-recorded it years later, after a Where Are They Now segment on him blew up the phone lines at an LA radio station, it actually charted again. Mardones credited a move to Syracuse, New York, far from the excesses of Los Angeles, with saving his life. A beloved fixture of that city's music scene, he continued to perform until the end of his life, and returned briefly to the national spotlight with a stellar, haunting version of Roy Orbison's Running Scared at a Showtime tribute concert for the legendary rocker. Mardones died in 2020, sometime after being diagnosed with Parkinson's disease.
His wife, Jane, was by his side. He was 73 years old.
Randy Van Wormer was a guy who knew his way around a tune, and even if his efforts as a recording artist didn't leave much of an impression on the pop culture landscape, the songwriting certainly did. He penned country hits for the likes of Alabama, like their song I'm in a Hurry and Don't Know Why, and the Oak Ridge Boys with their song I Guess It Never Hurts to Hurt Sometimes. His tunes have been recorded by legends like Chet Atkins, Conway Twitty, and even the famously prolific songwriter Dolly Parton. Van Wormer recorded nearly a dozen albums of his own, and while most of the material went right under the radar of mainstream listeners, one solitary tune most certainly did not, Just When I Needed You Most, a number 4 hit in 1979 and one of the saddest songs ever recorded. After failing to even approach that tune's success, Van Wormer relocated to Nashville and embraced his countryside, penning tunes and scoring a couple of moderate hits on the country charts. Unfortunately, he didn't live long enough for the nostalgia circuit to come calling. In 2004, it was reported that Van Wormer had died of leukemia. He was only 48 years old. In an interesting footnote, the remains of Van Wormer, who had evidently been something of a space travel aficionado, were launched into space in 2012 aboard a SpaceX rocket, alongside the ashes of Star Trek actor James Scotty Doohan.
Scotty, beam me up.
Blues guitarist Jeff Healey was a singularly unique musician. For one thing, the method by which he played his guitar, seated, laying it flat on his lap, was one employed pretty much by him alone, and it allowed him to produce sounds with his instrument that other guitarists simply could not. He didn't play the guitar this way for the novelty of it, though. He had learned that way, and it was easier for him because he had been blind since infancy. Healey was gaining attention for his guitar prowess by the time he was in his teens, and after stints with a couple of bands, he formed his eponymous outfit in 1985. The Jeff Healey Band's debut LP, the amazingly titled See the Light, went platinum on the strength of its lone hit single, the gorgeous, moving ballad Angel Eyes, which went to number 5 on the charts. Subsequent releases failed to approach the success of that LP, and in later years, Healey pivoted to jazz, playing trumpet and guitar LPs like 2002's Among Friends and 2004's Adventures in Jazzland. Healey returned to the blues for one last album, 2008's Mess of Blues, but that year he died from cancer, a rare form of which had claimed his eyesight as a child.
Happy birthday, sweetheart.
Dad, he's the best birthday present ever! Can I keep him?
For Tommy Page, a handsome and talented teen promoting his self-produced demo EP in New York City in the mid-'80s, success came a little more easily than it did for the likely hundreds of others fitting that description at the time. While working at a nightclub, Page was introduced to Mark Kamens, who was producing for a pretty darned popular young singer by the name of Madonna, and his boss, legendary Sire Records executive Seymour Klein. After landing a contract with Sire, Page dropped his self-titled debut album, which pretty much went nowhere. But then, luck struck again in the form of a chance meeting with red-hot boy band New Kids on the Block, with whom he shared a ride in a limo. Taking a liking to Page, the New Kids resolved to boost his fortunes. The Kids enlisted Page to open for them on their step-by-step tour, and they armed him with some new material, I'll Be Your Everything, featuring backing vocals by the New Kids' Donnie Wahlberg, Danny Wood, and Jordan Knight. The tune shot to number 1 on the pop chart, but despite huge pushes by Sire's parent company, Warner Brothers, Page was unable to duplicate his success. Abandoning his pop career, Page became a successful executive, first at Warner Brothers, then heading up the artist partnerships division of Pandora, before joining Billboard in 2011. But he was apparently experiencing mental health issues that few knew about. He died by suicide in 2017, prompting an outpouring of grief online from his musical collaborators and his past and present employers. Charles Pettigrew and Eddie Chacon, who comprised the vocal duo cleverly named Charles and Eddie, formed their partnership following a weird twist of fate. Speaking with The Guardian in 2020, Chacon described how, after releasing a massive flop of a solo record for Columbia and failing to get anything going out of musical partnerships, he had nothing to show for it but a few demo tracks produced by the Dust Brothers. Signed to a deal with Capitol A&R exec Josh Deutsch in the late 80s, a discouraged Chacon struck up a conversation with a young man who was clutching one of his favorite records, Marvin Gaye's Trouble Man.
Marvin Gaye, 1972 Trouble Man soundtrack. Everything you missed, jammed into one album.
I'll put it on the list.
As it turned out, that man, Pettigrew, was also signed to a deal with Deutsch, yet somehow the pair had never met. Their friendship quickly turned into a partnership that produced an album led by a surprise smash single, Would I Lie to You, which blew up the charts around the world and went to number 13 in the US. That success, though, quickly turned sour when Deutsch departed for another label, leaving the pair stranded with no support. While the duo continued to send demos to each other in hopes of working together again, any hope of a comeback ended when Pettigrew died of cancer in 2001. Chacon says that he struggled with the loss of his friend and their one-hit wonder status for decades, only returning to record a proper album in 2020 at the age of 56. Rap duo Criss Cross may have been a borderline novelty act, comprised as they were of two barely teenagers who wore their clothes backward, but their recipe for success contained two pretty undeniable ingredients. In 1990, future super producer Jermaine Dupri, just 18 at the time, discovered the pair, 13-year-old Chris Mac Daddy Kelly and Chris Daddy Mac Smith, while the boys were shopping for new shoes at an Atlanta mall. Dupri would later tell Billboard that the pair were simply made out of charisma. People were paying attention. I said, if you have that captivation over people right now, if you had a record out, this might be ridiculous.
When I met them, I said, what do y'all do? Light-skinned Chris said, we just cool.
Dupri had been sitting on a hot track, the idea for which came from watching the crowd jumping in unison at a concert. And after enlisting his young future stars, he brought on the second ingredient, an up-and-coming MC Treach of Naughty by Nature, who wrote the duo some lyrics. The result? Jump, a big fat #1 hit that stayed perched atop the chart for 8 weeks and propelled Criss Cross's debut album, Totally Crossed Out, to quadruple platinum sales. The LP produced additional tracks that climbed up the rap charts, but Jump, as huge as it was, proved to be the only top 10 pop single the pair had in them, and subsequent albums failed to make a mark. In 2013, it was reported that Kelly had died of a drug overdose. He was only 34 years old. If you or anyone you know needs help with addiction issues, help is available. Visit the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration website or contact SAMHSA's National Helpline at 1-800-662-HELP, 1-800-662-4357.